Hello, fellow writers. My name is Laura, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I'm very happy to see you. I am a fantasy author who has done a lot of work with learning about the mentality of writing, and I want to be able to share that with you. We're going to be talking about the ephemeral concept of feel. So feel is kind of the term that I'm using for, people talk about that gut feeling they have. You might hear authors talk about, I knew that this thing was wrong with my story, and then I went and did X, Y, and Z, and then everything worked beautifully and together, and, choirs of angels sang. You might also think of it as your instinct. In rather crude terms, the way I like to explain feel is that it is your brain taking in information kind of on an unconscious level, like it's looking at the entirety of the world, right? In whatever situation that you're in, or taking all of that information in and then making a conclusion about it that you can't really point at one thing and say why that you have come to that conclusion. Like, if you're talking to a person and you're like, I have a bad feeling about this person, you just feel uncomfortable or something like that. And that is, you might be like, oh, well, they're like standing too close. Well, people have stood too close to you before and you probably haven't felt uncomfortable, or they're saying like this thing that really just doesn't, people have said things that don't feel right before. It's like the combination of all of those things together, right? That's what feel is. That's what your intuition is. That's what your gut feeling is. Your brain can do this because it has experience with situations that are similar to this, things that you have been through before, experiences that you've had. Children can have gut feelings about things, and they tend to trust it a little bit more, yet they have less experience. But like if a kid is like, oh, I don't like that person, or, whatever like that, like you're more likely to trust them because they don't get all caught up in our head. And that's what we do, is a lot of times, like, we'll have these gut feelings and then we'll kind of dismiss them because of logic, right? Like, that doesn't seem right, but there's no good reason why that doesn't seem right. And so, I'm ignoring my gut feeling. Since I am trying to tie all of this back to writing, obviously, I am calling this writer's intuition. And writer's intuition is it's a term that I coined myself, but it's basically the feel of writing. And we want to be able to develop that, because the more of a feel that you have, the better you'll be able to deal with problems that come up. The more experience you have at writing, the more writer's intuition you're going to have. But if we want to be able to expedite that process, right? I want you to be able to consciously develop your unconscious writer's intuition, right? We're going to dip into another discipline for a little bit, and that is horseback riding. I work with horses. I have been horseback riding for over a decade now. And one of the things I remember is that when I first started taking lessons with my current coach, she was very clear about the fact that we would be learning two specific things. One of those things would be skill, the skill of learning to ride a horse. So like, you pull on the one rein and you that turns the horse's nose, and then they make a turn, right? And then you press with your outside leg, and then the horse then goes the way that you want them to, right? Like, that's a skill. What are the motions you go through in order to make them walk, to make them trot, to make them to stand still, right? And she said that skill is easy to teach and easy to learn. Like, skills are easy to teach and easy to learn. And then she was like, but the most important thing for learning how to ride is the feel, right? That's what we're talking about. But she said feel is impossible to teach and very difficult to learn. And I was kind of like, okay, if it's impossible to teach, what am I doing here, right? And so basically what she did was I would be riding around on the horse working on whatever skill we were working on, turning, whatever. And she would then, she would into that space say, oh, the horse was moving very rhythmically right there. Did you feel that? And I'd be like, no. And then she'd be like, oh, their shoulder fell out there, right? And so they were falling over a little bit. Did you feel that? No. Oh, they picked up that trot really well and just did a beautiful strike off. Did you feel that, right? And I would say no, because I wasn't feeling these things. But the more she asked, eventually the answer kind of started being maybe I understand. And then eventually it got to be, oh yes, I did feel that. Oh, I can feel the horse doing this particular thing. And again, it's not this thing where you can point at one thing and be like, they're doing that thing specifically, and thus that is the thing that we're looking for, right? It was the way the horse feels under you. And so the way that she was teaching me feel, because remember, feel is impossible to teach, what she was doing was she was raising my awareness. She kept bringing my attention back to, what is it that you are feeling in this moment, and how is that different from what you were feeling the last time I asked that question, or what you happen to be feeling when you were, consciously thinking about it. And so she was, by raising my awareness, teaching me to teach myself feel, right? And so this is what I would like to do for you, is to give you some skills in order to help raise your own awareness, so that you can see that you are developing feel, and then do it on your own. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, I am not actually there with you right now. I am a pre-recorded person on your YouTube screen, who is talking to you from the past. So I cannot, specifically walk along behind you or stand behind you at your desk and be like, oh hey, look at that. Did you notice that? Because it's physically impossible for that to happen. And so what I need to do is give you some skills for teaching yourself to do that, so that you can then teach yourself the feel. So I'm going to liken this back to the video that I did on advice. If you haven't watched that one, you might want to take a look at it. And so that one is, taking a piece of device and then trying it on for a certain amount of time, and then reflecting on whether or not that helped you or whether or not that didn't help you, and then deciding whether or not that piece of advice works well for you, which you can also do with this advice. This is just on a much larger scale than that, because feel is something that you are going to be developing forever. You're never going to reach a point at which you say, oh, my writer's intuition is perfect. I never have to learn anything ever again. I am amazing and wonderful, and, we're done. As much as we'd like to reach that point, as a writer, you kind of want to always be getting better. And that just means that you're going to develop feel about one thing, and you're going to be able to write really good exposition, or, something like that. And then you're going to, know how to fix exposition. If the exposition feels like it's dragging, if it's not punchy enough, whatever, you're going to be able to fix it. And then you're going to figure out another level of exposition, right? You're going to be even more amazing at it, right? That's just kind of how it goes with writing. Even when you think you've got your good skill, you're gonna keep going in it. So while with advice, it's kind of like, oh, okay, that piece of advice is going to be here. I'm going to try it out. It's either going to work or it's not. Your feel, you're just always going to be developing it. You always want to be aware of it to a certain extent, right? You're not sitting there and obsessing over it, but you do want to be able to sit down and be like, okay, what have I done, and how can I be aware of that? So one of the main ways that I feel like I have developed my own writer's intuition is number one, by reading other things, like other books and media that other authors have written, because you get a feel for, this works, like for whatever reason, and this flow is good, right? And then you can go into the skills of that, obviously, like, if you take the 7-point Save the Cat movie structure, or 3-act structure, or whatever it is, you can do things that are like, this is why this flow is working. And then when it doesn't work, but what that means that when it doesn't work, you can feel like this part is going good, and then right here it gets boring, or right here it gets awkward, or right here whatever, right? Like in your own writing, you'll start to notice, I'm reading this, or either I'm reading this, or like maybe a beta reader will read it for you, and they'll be like, this part is boring. They might not necessarily know how to fix that, nor should they be giving you that advice necessarily if they're just a beta reader. But you can go, oh, this is boring, and so I need to figure out why that is. I'm going to go to my skills and figure out all this stuff. But the writer's intuition part is being able to tell that part is boring without necessarily having someone say that to you, right? Because you might write it and be like, yeah, this is good, right? I mean, a lot of us do that. And then you kind of go on, and then it just kind of sits there, right? And you want to be able to notice that part isn't exactly, it doesn't flow right. I've definitely gotten to the point where I can be writing or reading over something that I have written, and there's that writer's intuition in the back of my head that is like, this could be better. I don't necessarily know how, but this could be right. Like, that's what you kind of want to develop. And so part of that is being aware of that when it happens, right? Because a lot of times we'll be like, oh, okay, this is or whatever, and then you just kind of go on because you want to get through the book, right? And sometimes you should go on. I'm not saying that every time you have this, you stop and like pick at it, whatever. But you want to start taking note of it, right? Because your brain is learning that there's something wrong even though you can't put the finger on it. So the first thing you have to be able to do is be like, oh, my brain is telling me something. Okay, it says, I don't like this. I mean, it might be as simple as, this doesn't feel right, right? And so you just want to take a note of that. You can even write it into your little thing. Brain says this doesn't feel right. I don't think this feels right, whatever. And then later on, like, I've kind of been to the point now where if I feel like a scene isn't going right, I can be like, oh no, this does not flow with what I feel is the flow that it should be going with, right? This is why teaching feel is so, teaching writer's intuition is just so hard, because I'm like, and then I figure out that this is not feeling right. And, I cannot explain to you why it is that doesn't feel right. But I know that it's not feeling right. And so I know that I need to iterate on that scene however many times I need to until that ends up coming up. So at the very beginning, like the main advice that I'm going to give you for this video is start noticing that. Start noticing in your writing when something feels really good, right? Like, you're like, oh my gosh, I was on fire for that, right? You might not know why, that scene was on fire, but like, make a note of it. Or, oh, that scene was really hard to write. That was just, whatever. Make a note of it. When you watch, your TV show for the week, or whatever it is that you're binging at the time, and you're like, oh my gosh, that scene was so cool, right? Like, make a note of that. For TV, you might want to write down what you thought about that scene, or whatever, because unlike your writing, you can't always just, pull that back up and like look at it. Or if you're reading a book and you're like, oh wow, that whole section was just like it just was so nice and neat, right? You want to like mark that in the book so that you can come back to it later and be like, okay, why was that like that? But yeah, the noticing of it is really the hard part. And then once you've started noticing it, that's when you can go back, like, these are the things you've marked, these are the things you've written down, and you go, why, right? Why did this feel so good? Why did this feel like it was flowing? Why did this feel like the characters were just on point? Why did it feel like whatever? And that's when you're gonna kind of go into that, and you're gonna study that. You're doing kind of like a deep dive on these sections. Why did this feel good? Why did this feel bad? Why did this work? Why did this not work? And you might not be able to come up with an answer, right? And you might be able to. You might come up with the wrong answer. But the important thing is that you're trying. So then you know, if it's your own writing, try rewriting it. Right? If it feels bad, try rewriting it. See if you can make it feel better. If it feels great, compare it to a piece that doesn't feel great and be like, okay, what is the difference here? You know, are the characters not acting? And this is where your skills will actually come in. It's like, then you go, is the character working really well? Is the character not working really well? Is the exposition, you know, like those type of things. But the thing that I am bringing to you is just, you want to start noticing those, and you want to start writing, you know, focusing on those, writing them down, and paying attention to them on occasion. And so for the things that are not working, you're gonna try and fix them, and it may work and it may not. But the more things that you try, the more things you figure out don't work, right? And then when you do eventually get it, because if you keep at it, you're going to. And, you know, eventually it could be going and getting help from other writer friends, right? Like, I've read this and like, I can't figure out why this is so bleh. And they'll be like, oh, I've run into this before. My writer's intuition says it could be X, Y, or Z. And then you go, okay, let me think about that, right? And then as you do that more and more, your writer's intuition will develop. You'll start catching those things on your own, and then you will move on to learning better and better feel. Better and better writer's intuition, as it were. I do want to say, whether or not you do these deep dives where you go and you say, this didn't feel right, and then you like study it, your writer's intuition is going to develop either way, right? As long as you keep writing, you are getting experience writing, and thus your writer's intuition is going to develop. So don't worry that if you aren't able to do this, or you feel like you're not ever able to figure out what the problem is. As long as you keep writing and you keep trying to improve what you've written, your writer's intuition is going to develop, right? It might be slow, it might be fast, but it's going to develop. And even if you put, I'm going to say that even if you put effort, like a whole bunch of effort into it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to figure everything out, like, amazingly, right? Like, that's just part of the writing process, is that it's not always easy, right? Like, you learn the skills, you sit down and you write, you do all this kind of stuff, and like, it's still not always perfect. But another thing that I'm hoping this video helps you to do is to know that that's out there, and that's the thing that you can do, right? That you're not just always going to be at whatever level of writing that you are, as long as you keep writing. So part of this for you is going to be figuring out what it is you need to do in order to be aware, to notice that awareness, to make note of that awareness, so that you can go back to it and look at it more deeply, and make improvements. And that's going to be different for everyone. For me, because I was not developing it consciously for a really long time, it was just getting those feelings where it was like, I recognized that this time when I wrote, like, it was just flowing and it was going, and so I know this scene is good. And this time I was writing and I struggled through it, and it was horrible, and I had to rewrite it over and over and over and over, right? One of the ways that I know that what I've written is pretty good is that if I try to rewrite that scene, I can't, because I keep thinking back to the scene that I already wrote. Because, somewhere in my mind is like, oh no, you did a good job with that. So whatever yours ends up looking like, you're going to figure that out. And just know that this is not an easy process. It is a lifelong pursuit. As long as you are writing, you are always going to be developing your writer's intuition. There is no goal, right? There's no goal within, trying to develop your writer's intuition to a certain point. The goal is always to write the book that you want to write, or write the story that you want to write, or write whatever, create whatever it is that you want to write. And as long as you're doing that and trying to make that the best it possibly can, you're going to be developing and getting better and improving your writer's intuition. So, get out there and start writing. And, today, whatever you write, be like, what, this feels like this was pretty good, or this feels like this was terrible, or whatever. And then, count that as a win, right? Just the noticing of it is the win. And then you can go back later and try and fix it, or don't try and fix it. Keep writing, right? Whatever it is that you need to do in order to continue to make progress. And over time, you will develop that writer's intuition. And I wish you the best of luck. Remember to give yourself a break, because writing is a marathon and not a sprint. So if you like this video, go ahead and like this video. And if you'd like to see more of my advice on how to deal with the mental pressures of being a writer, then go ahead and subscribe, and there will be more videos. And they will probably be helpful. And I will see you guys in that next video. Okay, bye-bye.